iRacing, you wanted the best, you got them for abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
Hello everyone and welcome to V8 Online's coverage of the Monday night V8 Supercar Strength of Field, and we're here in the 24-degree heat of Sonoma Raceway. Drivers are used to this after the Scops round just a few weeks ago, but a few weeks in between means there might be a few cobwebs to find their way around this very short circuit where every corner is absolutely critical to your lap time, and lap time is the critical point in this session right now, Zach, because we're in qualifying and the drivers are struggling to find their way around.
Yeah, absolutely. The sun looks like it is partially setting in this beautiful part of California at Sonoma Raceway, and the flow of this track, as you said, Bo, is extremely important. And we've got a couple of drivers who have already set some pretty nice times. Our series champion from last time, Dane Warren, currently sitting on top with a 110.9. He's followed up by Ryan O'Sullivan, half a second behind on a 111.4. So Dane has a very comfortable lead as Brett Cananzi now jumps into second place with a 111.4 as well, just beating Ryan by a couple of hundredths there. But yeah, there's two real overtaking zones on this track that the drivers are going to have to really utilize tonight. But judging from the Scops race that we had a few weeks ago, and I even participated in the Split 2 race, I think we'll have a really good night of racing tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we saw in the Split 1 race for V8 Scops that strategy could be so crucial, and it will be once again. 32 laps here today, and they are very fuel restricted, so they are going to have to take some fuel at some point in this race, which we saw in Scops turn the race on its head. Could very well happen once again, but a few drivers now still on their second laps, just trying to find their way around, and one of the fastest drivers on a second lap at the moment is Michael Taljancic, who's coming into the final few corners. And we'll see if he can improve, currently on an 11.7. So any little gain here, and he could potentially jump Miles McMullen, who of course is always fighting for a championship. So we see if Taljancic can improve, and he can't. So unfortunate there for him. And I will look for someone else on another lap. But looks like a lot of people have aborted the second lap if they didn't quite get it right on the first lap.
Yeah, still got Brenton Hobson and Greg Sharp. Steve Jansen's actually in the pits, but Greg Sharp just finishing up his second lap now as well, coming very safely through that final corner there. But there is a fairly, we've got a reasonably large field tonight of 27 cars, which is good to see. This race is split twice, so plenty of people joining in the action, which is always fantastic for a Monday night series like this. But there is quite a disparity in the times on the timing sheets, especially given it is such a short track here. We're ranging all the way from a 110.9 to, I mean, realistically, the slowest representative time at the moment is probably a 13.5. So that's a little over or a little under 3 seconds. That's going to cover the entire field there as Brenton Hobson's just parked himself up to 6th position, which is an improvement for him. So nice job. Importantly, as Marlon McMullen, one of our championship contenders in second position at the moment, currently sitting in 7th place. So he's got some work to do tonight. But I think traffic's going to play a really important role in this race today, Bo, given the length of the track, it being so short, and the relatively large gap in the timesheets on in this qualifying session. We could see traffic come into play a lot this evening.
Yeah, we could, especially with drivers who have pitted and drivers who haven't pitted. There's a lot of opportunity for drivers to get held up by one another, and you know, on a circuit that only has 2 overtaking opportunities, that's not going to be what you want, and it's going to hurt even more than somewhere on a longer circuit like around Le Mans we saw last week, as Hobbo finished his second lap and got so close to the wall he actually gave himself an incident. So I just decided to finish the lap just to get a bit more experience in these cooler conditions. But yeah, if these drivers find themselves in traffic around here, it's going to hurt so much more than other rounds. So that's one thing these drivers really have to watch out for. So Warren, on pole position at the moment, half a second clear of the field. But if he finds himself in traffic, that brings him back into the entire field well and truly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's when we may see cars starting to utilize this strategy component. You know, obviously, if you're sitting behind a car for even a quarter of a lap or half a lap, you could lose a second or so here or there. If you have several cars coming up in a train, if you're in your pit window, you may just decide to come in and deal with maybe racing a couple of cars or hopefully having a gap rather than trying to push through lap traffic, as you can always get caught up in an incident or something to that effect when you are pushing through like that. But qualifying has finished, and we'll get the results up for you on our screen now. Dane Warren taking a commanding pole position on a 1 minute 10.9. He's going to start off ahead of Brett Cananzi in P2. Ryan O'Sullivan starting out of position 3, with Brady Myers taking the final spot on the second row. Jordan Ross taking out 5th position, with Brenton Hobson in 6th. Marlon McMullen, one of our championship contenders, sitting in 7th position. He'll be lined up next to Michael Taliantich. Thomas McMillan, who we saw having an exciting race last time out at Le Mans, will be starting out of 9th position. And Corey Preston will be hoping to put his woes behind him for the last few rounds and look to move his way forward from 10th.
Yeah, and just behind him on the 6th row of the grid will be Thomas Hinz, and he's got Michael Cracknell for company on the 6th row of the grid. Behind him is Kurt, the man, the myth, the legend, Stenberg, and Wayne Burke lines up behind him. Ben Smith for All-Star Motorsports will line up in P number 15 with Craig Jones just behind, followed by Cooper Webster, Steve Jansen, Emily Jones, and Greg Sharp to round out the top 20, with Andrew Zackerson, Abrafati Putra, Cesar Terron, Inigo Bayer, David Miller, Alvaro Renbani, and Keith Wheeler rounding out 27 cars around a very, very small circuit, weighing in at just 3.2 kilometers. It's going to be very difficult for these drivers to make passes get done. Obviously, there's going to be strategy in this one as well. So we just wait for some of the drivers now to grid up. It's going to be a hard race. The run into turn 1 is going to be brutal. It's uphill, it's blind, it's difficult, and the drivers are going to have to be very, very careful. It's going to be close quarters the entire way. There's plenty of opportunities to get past the driver into the first few corners, but there's so much risk involved, and with this amount of cars, it's always going to be tough. But we're down now. The green flag is in the air, and it's going to be lights out, and away we go. Dane Warren has absolutely blitzed the field. He's got a bit of a wiggle on, but it's going to be a huge fight for the drivers behind. Brett Canardi has a huge pack with Brady Myers and Ryan O'Sullivan getting into turn number 2, and the rest of the field now all making the uphill climb. And there's been contact just about, and that's going to be the driver of Cooper Webster, who's got a lot of damage to the car. Unfortunate for that driver there, but they're all going single file just about over the hill now.
Yeah, and Ryan O'Sullivan was part of that incident as well.
Oh,
he's got
contact!
all the
Corey
way to the back
Preston.
of the field. Craig Jones has been involved in that as well, and I think another one of the CMR cars involved with Corey Preston there. I think that could have been Steve Jansen involved as well. So a little bit of argy-bargy in the first couple of corners here. It is a very hard turn 1 with the change of direction and the weight of the car going in so many different directions. But everyone calming down into single file line now. But Dane Warren did get a fantastic start, and he is leading at the moment from Brett Cananzi and then Brady Myers as they come to the completion of this first lap.
Yeah, and Brenton Hobson's absolutely butchered the run out of the hairpin, and Marlon McMullen is looking to take full advantage. They're going to go side by side. A lot of horsepower in the SSR car, though. He might be okay to hold on to the position, and he will, because Marlon McMullen is going to say hello, concrete. He's going to say goodbye, Thomas McMillan, and that is a big, big moment for Marlon McMullen. He needs a championship. He's been fighting so hard over the last few seasons to try and pick up a championship, but unfortunately, concrete is not the answer.
Yeah, and now he's sitting behind Thomas McMillan, who is teammates with Dane Warren. So, and Tom, a feisty racer, irrespective of if his teammates leading the race or not, as McMullen's just going to show the nose. Hins just gives him, McMillan, pardon me, just gives him a bit of room as they come by too wide. They're going to continue too wide, but McMillan has the preferred line into turn 8 there and will come through this S's section ahead of McMullen. But if McMullen can get a good run out of turn 10 here, that'll put him in a really nice position to fire it down the inside at the hairpin of turn 11. But looks like he's just a little bit far back to do it this time. But who's not too far back? Wayne Burke firing it in just behind on Michael Taliancic. He's going to have to do a McMullen and fire it round the outside. He's going to just have to make sure that he washes off enough grip, and they've come together and they are riding the wall, and bang! That is game over for Michael Taliancic and Wayne Burke. I think we'll probably get a Cut Price Racing replay for you of that one, and racing hard, and Michael just not
left no room.
Yeah, he didn't leave room, and he just came across really suddenly. So Wayne Burke doing absolutely nothing wrong there. He was entitled to the track. He had plenty of crossover, and Michael Taliancic just doing a bit of skateboarding action there with Wayne Burke, and they'll have to sit out the rest of this race from the pits.
Oh, we've got another incident as well. The driver of Ryan O'Sullivan has been turned by Benjamin Smith.
Oh, and he's gone up in the air as well.
Yeah, so Ryan O'Sullivan has had a nightmare few weeks. He's collected by another car, which is David Miller, who was minding his own business down in 23rd position. And I'm sorry, Ryan O'Sullivan, you might be a teammate, but if you're spinning, you have to hold the brakes. That was stupid. You cannot do that. And unfortunately, he's collected a bunch of cars, including Steve Jansen, and he's just wrecked a bunch more cars than really ever needed to happen.
Yeah, it's better to be predictable than try and be polite. As we have just seen, it can have rather catastrophic consequences there for Ryan O'Sullivan, and he'll have to reflect on the last couple of weeks and push himself forward. There's obviously a lot of races still to go in this championship, but can't afford too many mistakes like that. You can only really afford 4, and then you really have to nail the other ones. Just having a look at Emily Jones. She's moved through the field pretty nicely up from 19th position. She's currently sitting in 11th and looking to catch up to the back of Michael Cracknell, who's also having a bit of a look at catching up to Kurt Stenberg, who is right on the tail of Thomas Hins as well. So got plenty of action going on here, but the leader, Dane Warren, has absolutely checked out. 2.85 seconds over the line this time around, and he has put on a commanding show so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Dane Warren has got in pole position, absolutely blitzed the start and run away when everyone else was coming to grief behind. So fantastic job once again from the All-Star Motorsports driver. He's a 2-time champion now, and he's showing why with such a dominant drive. But I just want to go back to that point you were making about Emily Jones. She's actually one of the highest placed drivers in this field to go +8 positions, but she's actually not the only one as well. Abrafati Putra up 8 positions, a huge gain. And the driver behind of Cesar Terron also +8. So a lot of drivers doing a great job, but I've accidentally just absolutely commentator cursed Terron as he runs wide and hits the wall ever so slightly. It won't be huge damage to that car, but he's lost a bunch of spots, as Jordan Ross has lost a lot more than a bunch of spots. He's had an absolute nightmare, and this might be some kind of technical issue, because he at no point was making that corner.
Yeah, that's a really bizarre one. He has a little bit of damage on the...
Oh, he's actually just slammed the wall out of the tight right-hander where you get close to the wall. Just not even on exit or anything. He's just gone to the left in the middle of the straight.
Yeah, he's maybe just cut that one a little fine. I know I've done that in practice before. And maybe he's gone to make that left-hand turn there and realized that the car's got no turn in it, and he's just decided to bail out. So that's going to... What was he sitting in? Up in 5th position there. So that's going to promote the likes of Emily Jones and Corey Preston and everyone else who was up behind as well. And Marlon McMullen is going to get out of that as well. We're just having a look on board with Kurt Stenberg, who's right behind Thomas Hinz, taking a little bit of a wider line as they come through that final hairpin to try and get a bit of a traction and a speed advantage coming up into turn 1, but he is quite far back at this stage. Really difficult turn 1. You're going to get off the power on the brakes and then back on the power as you come up this hill, and then a very tricky braking zone. Trying not to touch too much of the inside curb there as it can unsettle the car a little bit, and then fire it through this little section of corners here. Very deceptively slow through this right-hander here, as Thomas Hinz has just found out he's run a little too deep, and that's going to put Kurt Stenberg right on the back of Thomas Hinz now. And Kurt having a bit of a look down into turn 7A, but...
I think your replay might be a little bit off there, Zach.
Oh, gosh. I keep doing this, don't I? Yeah, they're down in turn 1 now. They're down in turn 1, so he's doing... he's still keeping in there, and it is very difficult to make a pass around this track, but I think he's looking strong in the sections of the track where he needs to be closing up to make those positions.
Yeah, so Thomas Hinz actually doing a very good job, and he's running away a little bit from Stenberg, but just behind a driver that isn't running away from anyone is Emily Jones. She's coming under a lot of pressure from Corey Preston now. These drivers have all closed up on each other. Emily's made good progress on Crackers, who's just trying to run his own race, and Corey Preston, of course, involved in an incident at the start of the race and has to fight his way through. And a slightly new livery on the JMSR car, a bit of a retro feel with it, with the number details and everything. So good job there by the designers there. And let's see if it can be even faster for Corey Preston, as he just has a little bit of look on the inside into the tight hairpin, can't do anything with it, and almost goes into the back there. But nonetheless, this should be a very good battle to watch in the next few laps. But we do have a bit of internet drama going on. Dane Warren's still circulating out in the lead, but his internet's not circulating as fast as he would perhaps want.
Yeah, he needs a bit of a refresh on that connection of his. Meanwhile, Brady Myers is now right behind Brett Cananzi for your 2 final spots on the podium, P2 and 3. And Brett actually just ran a little wide coming out of turn 7A there, and it looks like he's picked up a little bit of damage on the left-hand side of that car. So Brady Myers hunting away, and they've both been putting in pretty good lap times, very consistent to one another, but nothing compared to what Dane's doing at the moment. And just going back to Corey Preston as well, Bo, I reckon if Corey was to write an autobiography, it'd have to be something like fighting through the pack from the back, because every single race he comes out, he puts in a decent, usually a very respectable qualifying effort, and then within the first few laps, he just finds a way to make himself in a bit of trouble. But these guys both pushing very, very hard for this second spot, as Brett Cananzi doing a good job to just keep himself ahead of Brady Myers for the time being.
Yeah, Cananzi is a lot more used to driving as sideways as he possibly can in a super late model, but right now doing a fantastic job keeping it straight and keeping it on the racing line from Brady Myers, who is really a rising talent in the V8 Supercars, and a driver that Progression Racing Australia really do try to give the best opportunity, because he's been making huge ground in the last few rounds. So good to see Brady fighting up the front once again, but we will still keep an eye on a few drivers that are still out there circulating. And one battle that is still hotting up, it's been very close for the last few laps, is McMillan and McMullen, who are still having their McBattle. And McMullen was very close out of the last traction zone, but McMillan just placing the car where he needs to be. But McMillan not looking as comfortable with McMullen behind as he was a few laps ago. And McMullen's starting to look very threatening for a move as he just gets in the mirrors there of McMillan, which actually opens up the door a little bit. So they're going to go side by side on the exit, and who's going to have the better traction right now? It looks like McMullen, but McMillan's got the inside, so they're going to go side by side, cleaner than Taliansis, but only just, as there's a squeeze by the driver of McMillan, who's trying to get the inside here and cross over in front, and he's done it just about right across the nose of McMullen, but McMullen is going to have the better traction if he doesn't line up sideways. They're going to continue side by side, and there is nothing McMullen can do because McMillan is going to hold that position for now, and it's bringing along even more ASM cars as McMullen thinks about a move to the inside, can't do it, but now Hinsley's here, now Stenberg's here, and now McMullen looking for the inside. Door is open, fills the gap, position done and done, and that is going to be McMillan now demoted down to position at number 6. So these guys are having a heck of a battle as McMillan thinks about the inside, almost turns him. This is a great battle, Zach.
Yeah, these guys are fighting hard but fair, and I gotta say these guys have gotten together a few times, not in terms of making contact, but just been battling each other quite a few times when we've been doing these Monday night races, and it always entertains. As Thomas Hinz just getting into the back of Thomas McMillan there. So those guys having a little battle now, and Thomas McMillan does look like he's struggling a little bit compared to the cars behind him. The cars behind him look like they've got a little more strength in their tires and they want to start pushing forward, but I think it's good that McMullen and McMillan are starting to draw apart from each other now, because, at least for our sake, because it's always a bit of a tongue twister when those guys get together. But Kurt Stenberg is also very much in this battle too, and he will definitely be looking for any opportunity, any small mistake, any door to open to try and fire it down one of these corners, because just like the Australian Grand Prix that we saw over the weekend, this is one of those tracks where it is very difficult to follow, and there are only a couple of select places where, without a mistake, really the only opportunities to make an overtake. One of those opportunities is now down here into turn 11, where you've got a very, very hard braking zone. Is actually Kurt Stenberg's actually just peeled off into the pits here on lap 11 of 32. So playing a different strategy, maybe trying to get out there on some fresh tires and put in some quick laps to jump these guys and then do a bit of fuel saving towards the end of this race. So have to see how Kurt Stenberg does there, but he is the only one to make the dive at this stage.
Yeah, Emily Jones has also come into the pits, but just in the background there was a very, very tough exchange between Corey Preston and Mick Cracknell. We'll get a replay up on screen for you now, as those two were diving for the inside into the hairpin, and Cracknell almost got into the back of Preston and almost turned him. It was a bit clumsy in the end, but Preston did eventually get the spot on Cracknell. So those two drivers who have been around in the V8 for a long, long time, and both two very tough races. So lots of respect between the two, but still very, very rough racing between those guys. But nonetheless, the two TTR cars have dived into the pits now. They're taking the early incentive to try and get an undercut on a few drivers. So Jones did pit 2.5 laps ago. She was trying to get the undercut on Cracknell and Preston, so we'll see how she comes out in relation to them. But also Stenberg has dived into the pits, and she's not alone now. Brendan Hobson, the driver who gained so much in Scott's switch strategy, has dived into the pits and is followed by the driver Thomas McMillan, who was involved in that battle as well. So a lot of drivers who were fighting very hard on track thought they're losing too much time and made the early call to dive into the pits.
Yeah, Emily and Stenny just working their way through a little bit of traffic at the moment. It's not too bad. Emily hasn't been held up too much by that there, but they do have David Miller a little up the road. Alvaro Rabanal has just pitted, which is going to free up Emily and Kurt to maximize on their strategy a little more. But Thomas McMillan has actually just pitted, and he's come out just ahead of Stenberg. So good work there from McMillan covering, but McMillan was at the front of, or he was a little bit ahead, and so the fresh tires might make a little bit of a difference, but not seeing anything lighting up on the timing screens just yet, as we're just waiting for Emily and Kurt to put in representative times after their pit stop. But Thomas McMillan doing a good job there to cover off those behind him.
Yeah, and a lot more drivers are starting to think it is time to pit. Brady Myers from third position, trying to get the undercut on Brett Cananzi, and there was a bit of a gap starting to develop between the two. Cananzi looked like he was a lot better on older tyres, So Brady's taking the incentive. He's going to go for new tires and go for a huge undercut. And we'll have to wait and see how that goes, because Kananzi does look good on these old tires. And he's going to be still doing some very quick lap time. So Brady Myers, if he's going to get into position number 2, he's going to have to dig very, very deep. But a very quick pit stop there for the driver of Brady Myers. He's going to easily keep that position on Brenton Hobson. So he is free to chase down the driver of Kananzi as he takes a very awkward line out of the first turn.
Yeah, he does. And but he's doing a very good job overall. And I wonder when they will pit, because we're not even, I mean, yeah, when as he does now. So Brett Kananzi fires himself into the pits. It is a lot earlier than we would typically expect to see a lot of people pitting. We're probably only, we're at about 3rd race distance when people first started making their pit stops, and we have at least another 2 or 3 laps until we're half distance in this race. So people obviously think that track position is more important, and people are trying to get on those fresher tires so that they can burn some rubber, some fresh rubber, and propel themselves forward. So Brett now in the pits, and we'll be looking to see where Brady Myers is on track to see if he's going to be able to do anything about this. And he's just exiting the final corner now. So coming down into turn 1 now, has Brady Myers done enough on his outlap to take it away from Brett Kananzi? And the answer is no. So he's actually significantly far back. So Brady not able to make that work. And just looking at the drivers as well of Kurt Stenberg and Emily Jones, we're just hearing something's happened to Thomas Hins as well. Just come up right behind Stenberg. So Stenberg doing a good job to make a position there. And Kananzi's hit the wall. Kananzi has gone into the wall. That is massively disappointing for him.
Yeah, too much curb, bounced over the secondary curb on the exit, and a monster impact into the tire wall. There is no coming back from that one. Big damage to the number 16 car, and unfortunately, he's just letting drivers go now. His race is well and truly done. It was going to be so promising. It looked like an almost guaranteed P number 2, but now he pulls off to the side of the road, lets the drivers go, and no doubt will be diving his way back into the pit lane for a large amount of repairs. And unfortunately for Kananzi, it was all looking so good, but there we go, dives into the pits. So that will promote a lot of drivers up the order now, and we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out. But it will be Brady Myers who will inherit P number 2, and McMullen now coming out of the pits, and he doesn't...
Ooh, just coming out ahead of Thomas McMillan there, and McMillan did a good job to make up all that time, but McMullen's still on cold tires, so if McMillan can make this work and use the hot tire advantage, he could, as he's just riding the back of the bumper of McMullen. There he's gone! He's lost it, he's pushed too hard and crunch into the tire wall there. Oh no, that was so, he was looking so good. And he'll tuck back in behind Michael Cracknell for P number 10, but oh, that's devastating. He was doing so well, just too much gas on that curb, and he just went around. It's very, very easy to do at the top of the hill there when the car gets light.
Yeah, and it's going to be so much easier for him to spin the car now, because there is real wing damage to the car. And although it doesn't do a huge amount on a V8 Supercar, it's probably one of the only places that really does produce downforce in one of these cars. So for McMillan, the balance of the car is going to be horrible now. And such a shame for him, as he was going to be so much further up the order now after the error we saw from Kananzi. So drivers on cold tires being caught out so much, and it's really, really hurting them. But a few drivers are going for a very alternative strategy at this point. Craig Jones, Putra, and also Inigo Bayer, they're all still yet to pit, and they're currently running all inside the top 4. So it'll be interesting to see when they take their pit stop. Of course, we don't expect them to be coming out fighting for these top positions, but this could be a bit of a trouble maker for the driver of Brady Myers, who will have to pass these drivers at some point, and he's only got about a 4-second margin back to the driver of Brenton Hobson, and this will be for position number 2 and 3 effectively on the podium. So that's a battle we well and truly have to watch out for, as well as McMullen, who is only a few seconds behind Hobson himself. So the battle for the podium isn't quite over yet.
No, but Brenton's putting in some pretty decent lap times, although that last lap was quite slow. Mullen's just come out of the pits, so we'll see how he's going on terms of lap time, but also Kurt Stenberg is still moving forward. Thomas Hinz behind him, and Emily Jones is also continuing to push. They're all looking pretty similar in lap times too. So Marlon, after his first lap out, a 1:11.9, so that's a good time comparatively to these guys, and that's definitely going to put him within firing range of Brenton. Well, that last lap he was 1 second faster than Brenton, so he should be back up there in the next lap or so.
Yeah, you'd have to think so, but it was a bit of an issue there for the driver. Brenton ran wide into the dirt just a little bit, but there's still a lot of drivers trying to push and try and make some ground at the moment. And one of those drivers is Brady Myers, who's still stuck behind the driver of Inigo Bayer, but McMullen well and truly flying. And perhaps it wasn't just the little moment in the dirt for Brenton Hobson where the pace came from, because McMullen on a well and true charge, and he's just hounding the back of the SSR car. And if he continues at this pace, you know, he might be able to, as Brenton Hobson's going to explore his favorite bit of dirt once again, almost loses it, almost in the wall, and he can say goodbye to position number 3. That's the podium gone. He might have got P2 in Scops, but it won't be a repeat of that. And I'm surprised how much Hobson is actually struggling, because of course he did have good pace here in Scops, and all of a sudden it is falling away from him, and he's not particularly comfortable with the drivers behind him either. On that last lap, Stenberg was a whopping 0.8 of a second quicker. So I'm wondering if Hobson has done something different on strategy. The pit stop times don't reflect that, but this is a very, very strange second half of the race for Hobson, who was looking so strong at the start of the race.
Well, he did make that contact with the wall earlier, and he could have some slight steering damage. And as we know, even though some slight steering damage may not really affect your time so much, it can affect your confidence when you're going into corners, and it can affect your, you know, where you're turning in and everything like that. It can affect the psyche of the driver, and maybe he's just succumbing to that a little bit. We just noticed as well Thomas McMillan, who spun and hit the wall not too long ago, has actually blown his engine coming into turn 1. He was just behind Michael Cracknell, between Michael Cracknell and Corey Preston, in around 11th position. So unfortunate end to the day for him after he was doing so well up in the order. But yeah, Kurt Stenberg now really getting up on the back of Brendan Hobson here, and you can tell with Brenton that he is not very happy with the car. The car's not getting to the apexes as well as he would like, and he's also seemingly having a bit of trouble putting down power. And through that high speed, those high speed corners, he does look to be suffering from a bit of understeer as well. So you can see that with Stenny right behind him. Stenny just much more confident and maybe a little more eager on the gas pedal as well, as he's
too eager.
Too eager. And that's going to allow Thomas Hinz to fire it down the inside, but I don't think you quite had enough there, Hinzy. So he'll have to back that out, and he's actually lost a bit of time. He maybe should have just tucked back in and had a go up into turn 11. But so Stenberg now going to have to work back that margin to Brenton. That's going to give him a little more breathing room, but there's still a long way to go in this race. We've still got 12 laps. We're only 20 laps in. So there's still a lot that can happen in those next 12 laps.
Yeah, absolutely. As Brenton Hobson actually runs very wide into the corner, but not as wide as Stenberg, who almost opens the door for Hinzy once again. So this battle is going to be a battle that will continue for the next few laps, I think. Interesting to see if Stenberg can get his confidence back and hunt down the driver of Brenton Hobson, who's in the number 9 car. Of course, he loves his number 6, so he's just gone for the number 6 upside down this week. But nonetheless, Stenberg trying to get the pressure back on, but Hinzy's doing such a good job to stick onto the bumper at the moment and apply pressure. Of course, these guys are used to racing each other quite a lot in Scops, usually around the same bit of real estate on circuit. So these guys know each other pretty well. They know how to race one another. But how will it go when it comes to just down with 11.5 laps still to go? And Stenberg definitely looks like he has the pace on Hobson. Hobson's not pulling away, and the gap looks like it is coming down despite that big moment for Stenberg on the last lap. So Hobson needs to find something extra, just anything right now, because, you know, he could be a complete sitting duck, because even the driver of Emily Jones isn't too far behind. So if they start battling and, you know, really holding each other up, it could open the door, as Thomas Hinz has a fantastic run. He's going to have an even better line into the final braking zone. Up to the inside, nose is still there, not quite an overlap, and thought about it, almost had the opportunity but Stenberg able to carry just enough corner speed to hold that position for now. But I think all three of these guys, if they get the opportunity, they're going to go for a move. I don't think one of them is keen on just sitting behind the other.
No, but I mean, yeah, I don't know if that'd be me. I don't think if I was Thomas Hinz that I'd be wanting to fire it on Stenny as much as that, especially when the you can see how much Stenny's closing up to Hobson now. I wouldn't be surprised at all as Hinz gets it very loose coming out of turn 3A there, and Kurt Stenberg using a lot of curb there on turn 4A. But Kurt's going to have a nice, you can tell just looking at the car, it's performing a lot better at this stage. And I don't think if I was Thomas Hinz that I'd want to be attacking too much. I'd probably be looking to take an opportunity from Kurt passing Brenton and trying to make something work with that, especially when there's 12 laps to go in the race. And realistically, those guys I don't think are going to be looking any higher than 7th or 6th position. I think that's kind of where they're going to be sitting unless something dramatic happens to the guys up ahead. But you can see Kurt now getting very, very close to the back of Brenton here, just hunting him down. And maybe this is where we'll start to see Kurt just showing the nose a little bit, just showing his intention to come through and just trying to pressure Brenton into making a mistake. And you can see he's using all the road, using a lot of that inside curb there that you would usually prefer not to use, and using a lot of curb all the way through that S's section there. But this corner's where he's been really, really strong, and if he's not too eager when he gets off the gas pedal...
Oh, Hobson is!
Hobson is. But, yeah, not... Obviously, Brenton was good enough that he didn't allow... Kurt to get up on the back of him there. So Kurt's going to have to find a way past. He's going to have to find where Brenton's weak and where he can make the move here, because there are only a couple of ways to do it unless you're feeling very flamboyant.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in the meantime as well, we have had the driver of Craig Jones dive into the pits finally and relinquish the spot as Stenberg so late on the brakes. There's a little bump. Hello, Hobson. We're just going to say hello. But you might have said hello a bit too eagerly, because now look at Thomas Hinz. He's got a bit of a run. Can't do much with it. But already with the fighting they're doing, you can see the gap to Emily Jones coming down ever so slightly. And she's in this battle now. And of course she is. She's 0.7 of a second quicker than every single one of them. So already just this, you know, tight line defending from these guys, just trying not to let the other driver get a run by slowing your apexes. Emily Jones taking full advantage, and we're about to have a second TTR car added into the mix. So this is going to be very, very interesting. But as I was trying to say, whilst Craig Jones was not pitting for a very, very long time, it allowed Brady Myers, you know, he wasn't making much progress at all, running in the 12.6 as compared to Marlon McMullen, who was running in the straight 12. So the gap for position number 2, once Aberfati Putra dives into the pits, which he should do very, very soon, McMullen doesn't have too far to go now until he gets to the back of Brady Myers. So in the meantime, we'll keep an eye on this battle with Brenton Hobson and Stenberg, but that's a battle to look out for in the dying laps, as Stenberg has a very good run, thinks about it as Hobson didn't quite get it right, and he's not going to get the apex right either, and he's going to be contact. Stenberg into the back of Hobson, almost spins him, but does the right thing, jumps on the brakes not to turn him, and they're now going to have a fight into turn 1, because somehow Stenberg still with a huge run on Hobson is going very wide though. That's not the line you want to set up a move, and he's going to have to stick behind Hobson for one more lap or so. But you can see now Hobson looking even more vulnerable. He's a very, very good defensive driver. He knows what he's doing when it comes to a car being in his mirrors. But right now, Stenberg has so much more pace and could get the move done into this next corner. Just dives out, fills the mirrors, puts Hobson under so much pressure as Hobson feels the pressure, runs wide. Stenberg with another good run, just on the back bumper constantly. Hinsey looking for an opportunity. If Stenberg overdrives the car just a little bit too deep into the corner, oversteer on the exit for the 12 car, the Apex replicas, and he is just hunting the driver of Brenton Hobson. Hobson attacking the curb in this ultra high speed section, but Stenberg looking so much more confident now, Zach.
Yeah, and I think that once Kurt gets past Brenton here, he's just going to cruise away, and I reckon here it is. And he's going to fire it down the inside into turn 11, and that is going to be... Oh, he gets very low.
Hinsey!
Oh, Hinsey's going to come through and be the hero of this contact. Oh, and I can't believe that Brenton Hobson was able to hold on to that, toughing it out against Hinsey and Kurt Stenberg there, and Emily Jones has actually been able to profit off that and make her way past her teammate in Kurt Stenberg. So Stenberg, the big loser, and now Thomas Hinz has an opportunity to put it on Brenton, and I'm sure that Brenton's feeling the heat now. He's already had one car bumping him and attacking him and crossing up all in front of him, and now he's got the car of Thomas Hinz, who is equally as eager, and he flies it big time, but that was never going to work, and Brenton, I think, was being very polite in giving that much room there. I really don't think that he needed to do that. He was just avoiding possibly any incident that might have occurred if Hinzy couldn't pull himself up, but Hinzy being a lot more obviously aggressive than Kurt Stenberg when he was trying to overtake, but Hinzy not quite there. He does seem very, very good on the brakes, making up a lot of time, making the double apex on that turn 11 there very nicely and getting a nice smooth exit. And Emily Jones is just keeping that gap pretty consistent, but Kurt behind her, he definitely looks like he wants to get back past, and I'm not surprised, but given that they're two team cars, they might fight it out, or they might let Emily take her shot, seeing on how she's going. But Brenton Hobson doing an excellent job to keep himself at the head of this battle pack for 4th place now.
Yeah, he's doing fantastic. He's under so much pressure from Thomas Hinz, who I think is one of the most underrated drivers in a V8 Supercar. Of course, he's not always fighting for the race wins, but a very, very quick driver in his own right. But I think he just has to tone the aggressiveness down if he is going to get this move done. Just, diving up the inside isn't always going to get the job done. But for Hinzy now, we'll have to wait and see how this is going for him. As the battle between Brady Myers and Marlon McMullen, I said it was going to close up in the dying laps, and indeed it is. 5 to go on the clock. And now Marlon McMullen has his headlights, well, actually no headlights. He's choosing not to use them, which is very disappointing. But he's right in the mirror now of Brady Myers. And the pace difference between the two of them has been outstanding. McMullen on a charge like no other, half a second a lap quicker at the moment. Actually, in fact, he's the quickest driver on the circuit, as Dane Warren didn't have the best lap of his life in a 13.5, with McMullen 1.1 seconds faster. But with a 19-second margin for Dane Warren, I think he's safe for the win, but Brady Myers is by no means safe here, Zach.
No, he's not, and that half a second overlap is a big deal, but as we've seen with Kurt Stenberg and Brenton Hobson, once you get up to that car, it's a completely different ballgame trying to overtake, and unless you make sure that you're in the right place at the right time, you're not going to be able to make that happen. So, but Marlon, obviously a very experienced driver. He's been runner-up in the V8 Supercar Championship a couple of times, I believe, so he is no stranger to making things work, and Hinzy's going to now make a move as we go back with him and Brendan Hobson, and he comes up the inside. Can he slow it up? He can. He just locks the inside rear a little bit there, but no harm, no foul. He gets through, and nice traction coming out. So Thomas Hinz now released, and I don't believe that he'll be able to make anything work beyond that 4th position, but a very good result nonetheless, as Emily Jones now takes station behind Brenton Hobson.
Zach?
Yes?
Dane Warren is incredibly slow. And he's still going very slow. The gap is coming down like no other. McMullen's looking for a move on Myers. He's still saving so hard with 3.5 laps to go. He's 3 seconds off the pace at the moment. This is massive ground.
He's completely, even through this high-speed right-hander, which you would normally almost be flat through, he is car off, clutch in, and he's trying to, he's not even, he's off the throttle and off the ignition even more than I've ever seen anyone do in one of these V8 races. So Dane Warren has had some kerfuffles in the pits before. We saw it several times last season with the opposite problem of too much fuel being added. And you can see he's trying to carry momentum without applying any throttle whatsoever, and it's causing him to run really poorly. And that gap is now down to 11, call it even under 11 seconds now, when he had an 18-second lead not 2 laps ago.
it's coming down so rapidly. 7 seconds in the last 2 laps. And if McMullen does in fact find a way past Myers, very, very snappy, you know, 10 seconds is a huge margin, but with how he's driving right now, if he is incredibly short...
Oh, and Brady's
spun!
Oh, no. He ran a little wide as they were coming into turn 7A there. He just was, he locked up the brakes and, oh yeah, he had a bit of a half spin and managed to catch it once and twice and actually kept it relatively straight. But yeah, that's the position gone to Brady Myers. So now, can Marlon McMullen, the gap's down to 10 seconds and it is coming down very quickly, but is it coming down quick enough? I don't think it is. I think that it looks like Dane has just enough juice. He'll have to come over the line with barely anything in it. As Emily Jones now trying to go tough with Brenton Hobson. She's going to try around the outside at turn 1. No, she's not. She's going to just hit the brakes, tap it back in, follow that line and get good momentum through turn number 2, which is very important. This will set her up for a overtaking opportunity either at turn 4A or turn 7A, but Brenton's been very good at this next corner here, always been getting a very good exit. So can he hold on? Can he get another good exit? Emily a little squirrely on entry, but again, Brenton Hobson car behaving very well after turn 4A, and he's not going to be troubled by Emily Jones. But what she has to do now is keep it nice and tight through this section, and Brenton's car has been understeering very badly through this section, and particularly through turn 10, which is this long right-hander right now. We've seen him go off a couple of times there, and you can see Emily starting to just close in a little bit, but not quite enough to put a move on. But she's only got 1 lap now to make this work. She's getting very good traction out of that final corner, though.
Yeah, she is. She's doing a really good job. Dane Warren has picked the pace up, so that should be the race sorted. The podium sorted as well with Warren, McMullen and Myers. But we do not know right now who's going to be coming home in the top 5. It could be any one of these black cars. Is it going to be an SSR car or one of the 2 Trans-Tasman racing cars? Of course, these drivers are fighting so hard right now. 1 lap to go, and already some very good overtaking opportunities already gone. Stenberg sideways in the background, so that might be him done. That one little slide can be enough to rule him out of that top 5 position, as Hobson is not comfortable. He's oversteering on the exit, and Emily Jones going for a very wide apex at the start to try and get a very good run. But we have to turn our attention to the driver of Dane Warren, who locks it up into the final corner. There was fuel-saving dramas potentially, but there's no sideways dramas. He's going to slide his way to yet another victory, and he's going to try and start off his campaign to defend the championship crown. Marlon McMullen wants the championship crown, but will have to settle for P number 2.
I think Emily's close enough here. Sorry to cut you off, Bo, but they both went off track into the final corner. Brenton locks it up. Emily goes down the inside. Does she have the traction to pull it off? They're going to go for a drag race. Who's going to come home in P5? It looks like it's going to be Brenton Hobson, but can Emily stick it out? No! She just misses out, and Brenton Hobson does a fantastic job to come home in the final spot in the top 5. Emily Jones 6th, Kurt Stenberg in 7th, and Ben Smith toughing it out and finishing just ahead of Craig Jones. Oh, is he? Oh, he's run out of fuel, and Craig's just got him over the line. What a good run there. Wow. Oh.
Never, ever lift off before the line, and Craig Jones kept his foot in. The driver of Benjamin Smith just coughing at the line and somehow picks it up by the smallest of margins. And fantastic job there. We're getting a few replays up on screen of some of the fantastic finishes we had there, including Emily Jones, who, you know, had the outside line, but almost looked like she had the overspeed, just clips the wall a little bit. I'm not sure if that would have been enough to change the result of the top 5, but nonetheless, fantastic finish from those guys. And you can never ever say it is over until the checkered flag flies.
No, well, I know they have a drag strip down here at Sonoma Raceway, Bo, but I was unaware that from the exit of turn 11 down onto that front straightaway there, but very, very fantastic racing from those 2 sets of drivers there. And yeah, I think Emily Jones, had she have had a little better traction or even just gotten on that power a couple of thousandths of a second earlier, that would have been P5 for her. But a fantastic race. So much happened there. We've got, I mean, even if you look down the order, most of the guys who started inside the top 10, Thomas McMillan, Brett Cananzi, Jordan Ross, Michael Taliancic, Ryan O'Sullivan, all starters inside the top 10, finishing in P19 and below. So much going on in that race and some really nice, close racing. A little bit of argy-bargy, but for the most part, with the exception of a couple of incidents that we saw, some really fair, hard racing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Dane Warren will walk away with the race win by only 9 seconds. So half the lead he had with 5 laps to go over Marlon McMullen. Brady Myers almost had P2, but had to settle for the podium. Still a very good result there for him. Thomas Sins managed to get the move done on Hobson and comes home P4, with Brenton Hobson getting position number 5 by 0.02 of a second over Emily Jones, who played the early strategy and almost made it work. Kurt Stenberg comes home P7, a great drive from him. Cracknell and Corey Preston had a great battle throughout the race, and they're going to come home 8 and 9, with Greg Sharp rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, then we've got Craig Jones in P number 11, followed closely as well by Benjamin J. Smith. Ben running out of fuel as he was coming up to the line, and Craig Jones just able to sneak through by the skin of his teeth. Inigo Bia in 13th position. He did well to come up from 24th. Abarafti Putra sitting in P number 14, with Andrew Zackerson taking out the final top 15 position. David Miller sitting in 16th. And then we start the first of our cars on the lap down. Alvaro Rabanal in P number 17, Keith Wheeler in P18, and our non-finishers, Thomas McMillan, Steve Jansen, Brett Cananzi, Cesar Terron, Jordan Ross, Michael Taliancic, Wayne Burke, Ryan O'Sullivan, and Cooper Webster, all non-finishers in this race. So that's 8 DNFs, which is, even by general racing standards, by a lot, but by general iRacing standards, it's a massive amount of cars. You might expect 3 or 4 maybe at the most generally. So to have 8 cars out of contention for the most part of half of that race is something you don't see very often.
No, it's a very high attrition rate, especially for a circuit, you know, with as much runoff in places as Sonoma. So just shows how hard the racing was here today. No inch extra given if needed. So fantastic job from the 27 drivers, and in particular the 18 that did make it across the line in the end. But of course, nonetheless, a very, very quiet week last week, but it won't be as quiet this week, because on Wednesday night, it's the return of the Oceanic Sprint Championship from one of the best circuits you will ever find. It's in Belgium. It is the absolutely brilliant Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and that is sure to be a brilliant, brilliant race. And then also the next broadcast after that, we'll be returning for the Monday night V8 Supercar Strength of Field from another American circuit. We're heading just across the country to Watkins Glen, which should be a really good race, Zach.
Yeah, it's always fun, a bit of a draft fest at Watkins Glen. I'm not sure exactly what config they're running there, but either config is fantastic. I think they're running the Cup, which includes the... Well, actually, that doesn't include the boot section. So a lot of slipstreaming, pardon me, like we saw at Le Mans last week. And as we saw at Le Mans last week, there was some absolutely terrific racing due to those slipstream effects. So I have no doubt that that will be another excellent race to tune in for.
Yeah, absolutely. 43 laps around there will be absolutely brutal on the drivers. But from us here at V8 Online, on behalf of Zach and Jay in the director's booth, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.